All right, welcome back to another episode of the Department of Peace. Today we're going to be talking about resistance training over a new series that we're starting here, where we want to talk about how we reclaim our bodies in some ways in pursuit of making more peace. So we're going to talk about strength training, fitness, things like that, and why it's not just some vainglorious effort. We're going to talk about nutrition and how nutrition has impacted us. Talk about it a little bit personally and apply it more broadly. And then we want to talk some about rest and recovery in a 3-part series we'll do over the next couple of weeks on resistance training. Today, we're going to talk about fitness or strength training specifically, because the world's heavy.
Yeah, I am so excited for this conversation because I just think it has so many parallels, and it's been such a life-saving thing for us in the actual strength training side of things. I just think it's been, I can't imagine what our life would be without it.
You want to set up the story of how we got there, or how you want to get into that?
You got us there. And so I think you should tell the story. Like why after all these years of life together does strength training matter now?
Yeah, so no one, absolutely no one, would have called me fit.
You might have.
Maybe. You know, I was skinny. I was underfed.
But did you know it?
No.
It's
all I had ever known in my whole life. Like in junior high, I was made fun of in gym class. I loved sports. Like I loved tennis. I loved basketball. I loved football, but I, really wasn't even remotely big enough for that. But I loved it. But it was like one of those things where like always last to get picked. Which never fully fazed me. Like I still wanted to be around. I still kind of wanted to have my shot, but I wasn't good at any of those things. And then just somewhere along the way, I guess after we moved away from one specific house, maybe that would have been like early high school. No, I graduated from that house. So after we moved away from that house and I no longer had a park in my backyard, went off to college, that was kind of the end of it for me. Never really even engaged sports much anymore. I ran here and there, like very here and there, very sporadically, because that's just like what I grew up associating with fitness. Like you run. I remember there was 1 week or so in Iraq where we got this DVD or something from someone. P90X. And we, in our living room with the electricity going on and off, sometimes we'd have air conditioning, sometimes we wouldn't. And we were, trying to keep up with what is now, looking back, I understand, an insane workout, and like not an entry level thing for anyone to try and get into, but we were, and lo and behold, it didn't last very long because it like completely burned us out, and it was just so much. Anyway, that's like I literally just covered my entire history of fitness or whatever you want to call it, And,
so why now?
Well, I in 2021, I started to make a connection. I don't really know how it came about. I don't remember it being conscious, but life was just starting to feel really stressful. Like there was a number of things going on at work that were just extremely exhausting. And they were all internal. They were all internal team, staff, policy dynamics that we were earnestly trying to address, and it just felt like nothing was ever good enough. And I think a good part of the executive team, middle management team felt that way. And it just, after months of it, it just was exhausting. And the exhaustion started to create something in me. And I think some of the other executives on our team were starting to experience these things as well that were completely foreign to me. Really elevated like blood pressure, high heart rate, a sense of like tightness in my chest, and like, just like everything was getting ratcheted up, and I'm 40 whatever, 1 or something at that point. And I've been in war zones. I've seen dead bodies all on the ground. And that affected me psychologically, but it never affected me physically in that way. Like I've never thrown up on the front lines, or I never really felt like sustained elevated heart rate or anything like that. And I started going on walks, listening to podcasts, or sometimes maybe even on calls that I was just like, I would be in Iraq and I would call, fellow executive or something back in the US, and we just talk about all this stuff that had us all amped up for hours or whatever. And I remember one time I was talking to my therapist. I want to say this was kind of middle of the year or whatever. And I made a somewhat passing remark. And I said, I don't know if this is a thing. You tell me, but I noticed that I feel better after I go on walks. It sounds like the stupidest thing to say out loud now, but I literally said this to my therapist. I was like, is that a thing? It's like going on walks. Like, could that be helping me with this? Like, I don't know if we're calling them anxiety attacks or what, and he was like, yes, that's absolutely a thing. Keep going on your walks. And that's where it started for me. I just was going on walks, and I was just kind of walking around our neighborhood. I didn't have a step count. I wasn't trying to do anything except just manage my anxiety.
And so then, you put on like 60, 70 pounds in the last couple of years. What took you from like the discipline of being in your office and working and fully focused on all of that? What took you out of that mindset all the way to like building muscle, discipline in the gym? Talk us through that.
I think so. In a couple months after that, all the the very things that were causing me anxiety, the very personnel issues and things like that a number of us behind the scenes were trying very earnestly to address and solve, all just kind of came to a head and resulted in an open letter being written to the board of directors, essentially just kind of broad brushing me and you and others as being bad people, essentially. Toxic was, kind of the word of the day. And we were branded as toxic leaders, toxic place to work, which I thought was, wildly out of step with reality and wildly unfair. And I felt was the result of a manipulative campaign of just one or two people who lied and manipulated other people into signing that letter without those people actually necessarily believing all that or knowing the truth. But it was very impactful. It certainly compounded my anxiety even more, and ultimately resulted in our board of directors, what was the word? Sidelining us. I mean, we were put on an official leave for a number of months while an official investigation was started, which we were very happy with. We wanted that investigation. What that meant practically for me was that for the first time in my entire adult life, I had time, and I had anxiety, and I had stress that didn't have anywhere to go. I'd probably always had stress, but I am someone who deals with stress, fear, any of it through productivity. And I think it's always been generally healthy, but I didn't have a healthy outlet to make things for the world. I didn't have an obvious way that I knew of to help others anymore. And that had been like the driving concern of my life for the previous 20 years. And I was really left on the sideline, relatively confused.
Without the tools that you were used to using to get through the confusion.
To cope.
Yeah.
And, I think those are the kind of situations that typically drive people into one or two coping mechanisms. Either you drink and overeat and sit around and do nothing and you're lethargic, and you just said I put on 60 or 70 pounds. Well, there's more than one way to put on 60 or 70 pounds.
Yeah.
And if you get laid off or sidelined or whatever from the thing that you love most and the thing that you built and whatever for months, like I could have easily put on 60 or 70 pounds in the bad way. I went to the gym for the first time, really. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really have a goal. I just needed to see if walking was good, then maybe there were some other things that I could take it to the next level. And I think mostly looking back above all, it was probably just about maintaining some sense of agency over my life. I felt like so much of my character was under assault in ways that were just wildly out of step with reality. The only thing I had left was it in some ways it couldn't matter anymore what anyone else thought of me, because that was being destroyed by the day.
Yeah, so your power to achieve in your life the way you had always achieved and worked to help others was completely taken away, and you were able to reclaim that power over your success and your achievement through strength training. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. So again, like it started with no goal. It just was going to the gym, and it was just I think a fairly obvious and like known on the nose kind of coping mechanism. It was just a way to get through, and turned out I loved it. It was just really fun.
Yeah, I think it's been such an amazing thing for our family. But as you think back 3 years and think back through the last 3 years, what do you think you gained from choosing to like push yourself in that way, to learn how to do strength training, learn how to do resistance training? What are the takeaways?
I'm a more well-rounded person in some ways, maybe in a lot of ways. I'm more useful than I could have been before. Like there are physical things I can do at 45 that I couldn't do at 25, which is not generally how we think of middle age versus youth. I'm a exceedingly better example, role model, pace setter for anyone, but most importantly to me, our son.
Yeah.
He was, what would he have been? Something like 13 years old, probably when this was all 12, 13, when this was all going down. And, the sweetest kid in the world that you can imagine, but by no one's fault but my own, very physically unhealthy. Because I hadn't set a better example for him. Now, my body type, when I was unhealthy, looked a certain way. His body type, when he was unhealthy, looked almost like the inverse opposite of that. And, the reality is in the world, we could have the exact same habits, the exact same bad habits, the exact same lack of discipline, whatever, and it's kind of a divergent path in the woods that would still lead to one thing being far more socially acceptable, fast forward 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and one being far less socially acceptable 20 years. And that scares me.
And I think physical health aside, mental health in that moment as well, you set an amazing example because you chose to do something with that moment and that energy rather than sit in it and kind of sulk in all the negativity that was coming at us. And our kids were coping with all of that too, because it was very public. And so it affected them directly. Their identity was just as tied up in the life we led and the organization that we led at the time as well. And so even as they were processing through it, I think you set an incredible example for an entire family of how to take that moment, that energy, and put it into something productive, not for the sake of producing, but for the sake of like an outlet for ourselves.
There's a metaphor that we all use and talk about in life and business and whatever, that like when you get knocked down, you get back up, and that was certainly our MO, like we'd had hard times before, personally, organizationally, professionally, whatever. There was no doubt that we were going to quote unquote get back up. But I think there was something about physically embodying that get back up. It's not just a metaphor. It's not just we, get back on the metaphorical horse. It's not just that we like quote unquote try again. It's like, go do something physical. Let that physical thing actually wreck you. Get injured, screw up, do it wrong, fail the lift, all of that. And then physically get your body back up and do it again. I just think that was really important. Maybe for all of us, it was certainly important for me, because I'd gone my entire adult life and sort of like even high school life of not really pushing myself physically.
It feels so counterintuitive to me that in a moment of a lot of social pressure and judgment and whatever else about the thing that you excelled at, that you would pick up a new hobby, like learn something completely from scratch, be willing to be terrible at it. What did that do for you? Was it just the challenge of learning something new, or was it not having to be the expert every time you went? Was it the lack of other people to notice that you weren't the expert in the moment?
There's certainly, depending on what, sort of modality of of training one might choose to get into, there's different kind of benchmarks that you can find that equal daily success, you know? And I think it was important in part to just have, you know, one of the things about business leadership of any stripe, and then social impact leadership in particular, is you're constantly being put to the test on numbers, metrics. And some of them are vanity, some of them are real, some of them are just inflated ego stuff that either we make up on the inside or external stakeholders make up on the outside because they want to have their own sense of power and importance. But numbers abound, and knowing your numbers is like business 101. And I think when I was taken out of that world against my will and not on my timing, there was something about transferring some of that energy to another set of numbers that served as a kind of surrogate or supplement or whatever. And that was probably part of it. In terms of like, and then you start to understand that. So for me, it was never like, I was never thinking, I was 40 something years old. Like it wasn't about going to the beach and having a beach body. Like literally that program we talked about 20 years prior was like literally called Beachbody or something like that. Right. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was just about conquering self, sort of competing with yourself or outdoing yourself or besting yourself or improving on you know, it was a lot of it's a very self-oriented initially, but it wasn't hard after a few sessions, a few weeks, a few months to go, well, for one, like for you to say, holy cow, like you look completely different. And then if you're tracking your numbers, like I was prone to do, then you literally can see charts and graphs go up and you're like, wow, it's only been so long and I'm actually like a lot stronger. And, you know, a fair amount of our work over the years has required physical strength that I rarely was the one to engage much in. We hired people mostly to carry heavy boxes and to carry heavy bags of flour and rice and to carry big things of oil, and because people all around us, millions and millions of people, needed it. And usually that strength work went to the lowest paid grunt worker. And usually those of us in higher positions of leadership stood on the sidelines and didn't engage that. It's social dynamics and all kinds of stuff. But if you zoom out and you're watching your own life fall apart, and some things we've discussed in other episodes about money and things like that, and how that made us feel vulnerable, it's not hard to start seeing muscle, strength, whatever you're tracking, as being just generally more useful to your community, your family, your society. What if the next bomb hits here and now I don't have a job. I don't have an organization. I don't have money to throw around to hire muscle to come help us. What if it's all on me?
Yeah, it shifts everything to think about it that way. I'm curious the parallels that you would draw between the discipline that it takes to show up and do that resistance training every day at the gym or however many times a week you go, versus like we maybe more commonly right now in the news and all of that, we're hearing about like resisting. Be the resistance, resist this thing. what are those parallels?
I think of the thing I get interested in resisting is what I just broadly term the way things are. Because I think maybe there was a time in place or history or your community where the way things are was really great. That's not how I feel today. I don't feel like the prevailing winds, the dominant forces, the order of the universe, the order of our countries, the order of our neighborhoods. I don't feel like the way things are is good. I don't feel like it is meant for our good. I don't feel like it's working for our good. And when I say our, I mean all of us. There are layers of us, like we belong to different us's. And I think there's always a place to belong to your us that someone else doesn't belong to. That's important. We need those constituent communities. Some level of I am this, not that, has value. But it is best when it is paired with an ability to transcend and include that smaller version of us and a for all of us kind of thing. So I don't think the way things is working for all of us. It's working probably for some of us. But I am on a mission. You are on a mission. The Department of Peace is on a mission to build a world for all of us. And to do that, it requires some level of resistance to the prevailing order of the way things are. Now, that resistance can maybe look like or express itself in a couple of different ways. Sometimes in the mass media or whatever, when you see people talking about resistance, they'll pair it with this idea of like a hand drawn back, Molotov cocktail, balaclava covering their face and, getting ready to throw something at the opposition. Fair enough. Like you push people hard enough and they run out of options. Like that is a form of resistance, but it's never where it starts. That's fairly late stage resistance. Where it starts is the way things are and the prevailing order of your community or society or nation bearing down on you with a kind of weight, suffocating you, and you have to push it off you. You have to push back against it. You are resisting by means of pushing and pressing against what it is doing to you. That's what we're resisting. And sometimes it is physical. And sometimes it's mental. And sometimes it's spiritual. And sometimes it's economic. And most of the time it's all of that.
Yeah. And
so the parallels for me are, I've been about trying to resist the way things are for a long time. But one of the things that I was leaving out, one of the things that I was largely unaware of, because I'd built a machine to help with it, I was able to hire out some of the physical stuff and was surrounded by good people, and we were doing good things that helped to insulate me maybe from some of the most painful feelings of what the physical implications might mean in a total breakdown kind of situation. Like I was always aware of the airstrikes and the bombs and the kidnapping was a massive fear of mine for a number of years here in Iraq. But I think I've gotten to a place now where I see it a lot more integrated. Like there needs to be, we need to be ready for the physical components, and the physical components actually bleed out and serve our capacity to bear up under the mental, spiritual, economic, etc.
Yeah, sometimes I think, so I go to the gym with you. We haven't talked a lot about that, but it really became like our family hobby, which has been beautiful and amazing, and something I'm most of the time really excited that you have let our family in. There are days when I don't want to go to the gym, but I can't believe how it's transformed our family, especially as our oldest has gone off to school, and it's just the three of us. It's a really great connection point for us, and I love that. But one of the things that I think about is that the physical training of my body means that I won't be a burden on my community in a moment of emergency. Yeah. That instead I get to prepare myself to play the role that I love. I love being able to come to the aid of someone else. And I think that I'm at my best whenever I get to use that part of who I am. And so I want to train for it today. Yeah. I don't know when it will be needed, but there were moments even before at our weakest when our strength was necessary, our physical strength was necessary. Like, you picked up a woman and moved her out of the way of getting run over by a massive vehicle. And thankfully you had the strength to do that.
Luckily she was very small.
And the will to do that, but it was necessary, and had you been helpless in that moment, had you not been able to move her, and instead you had to watch something terrible play out in front of you, you and everyone else around would be worse for it today. But you were able to use your strength in that time to help her. There have been times when we've had to carry physical heavy things that maybe we weren't as prepared for, but they were able to help those around us. And we love being able to do that. And now we know how to prepare ourselves to be able to do it even more. But the other thing that I think about every time we're in the gym and I'm doing something hard is how it's preparing my brain to push through more hard. Mm-hmm. And it's not just like, can I lift this weight that's on my shoulders up and down? But it's like, I know that every time I do that, I push through that resistance, that I'm getting stronger mentally to push through the resistance of other things in life that will come against us. And that practice is so important because we don't make good decisions in the moment unless we've already practiced those decisions. And so we've said for years, like, we have to practice our like mentally and spiritually, we have to go to the gym. And we were always better at that than going to like a physical gym. Yeah. And now we've just added the physical gym on top of it. But I know that I have to practice in my mind when something comes up on the news, or I'm challenged by some injustice that's happening in front of me. I'm challenged even in those moments to work out how I would respond if it's physically happening in front of me, and to be preparing today for what might come tomorrow and decide today who I'm going to be so that I can do those things tomorrow. And we've talked about in other episodes, this idea of being like faithful with the small things so that you can be faithful with the large things. I think that pertains to this resistance training, whether it's physical or mental, is what am I doing today? What small decisions am I making today? Repetitively over and over and over again, how am I practicing who I want to be in those terrible moments? When I get fired, when I get a call from the school, when I find out terrible medical news, when whatever the thing is that comes against every human in their life, am I preparing today for how I'm going to respond to that then? And I think that our going to the gym physically, our going to the gym mentally is so important for that. And I couldn't have understood the importance of that if you hadn't led our family in this direction.
One of the things I think we should say, and this is our belief, it's my belief, we're not trying to be fitness influencers, but I absolutely do not think all fitness is created equal. Do not think that all modalities or, methods are equally beneficial. The thing that we've really bought into is heavy weightlifting. Not fitness strictly in the sense of like long distance running or sprinting alone, or it's like that cardio bunny kind of modality that a lot of people believe, or aerobics, or like the group class kind of thing that would pair a woman with little pink weights. Like the coolest thing to me about working out with you is you've really, like, you're a legit muscle mommy. Like, you've like really adopted this notion of like lift heavy, and it's badass. It's cool. It's like, but it's also already in our life been useful.
Yeah.
And I think literally made us harder to kill. This is a line you hear sometimes in like in the Gym Bro podcast, in places like that, maybe, but it's true. Like, okay, so we were coming back from a month-long tour that we were doing to raise money for Ukraine, and we are probably 3 years into our own fitness journey and weightlifting and stuff like that. We've all put on lots of muscle. And we're driving through the rain in Florida near hurricane type conditions. I thought I was going slow enough on the road to be really safe. And we just hit a patch and slid and skid and ultimately crashed into a bunch of trees. And like, it was bad. It was messed up. And we were all injured in some way. Our son was very injured. But the way you handled that situation was, you hear about, the mama bear kind of just turning it on in a moment and lifting up the car or whatever. I think that's turned out to be bogus. Like, it never really happened. But you used real muscle. You didn't just turn it on. You applied training. You applied skill. You applied strength that had been hard wrought over 3 years to like bust yourself out of the car, climb up in ways that I don't know if you could have climbed before, jump down into, from a height that I don't know you could have jumped down before. Like, you did physical things in that moment to help us all survive that were like a movie. And then we step out of the car, ambulance arrives, our son feels like he's hanging by a thread, ends up having traumatic brain injury. And when he comes through it and everything starts to settle down, and I can go back and like go to the junkyard and find the car, and we take photos and see what actually happened, it's like, oh my gosh, how did we survive that?
Yeah. And
like, you can say hand to God or whatever, fine. And the gym, like, honestly, because our necks weren't these little floppy spaghetti noodles that our brains would just slosh around and get knocked out. And I mean, already traumatic brain injury, brain bleed, but how much worse would it have been if his neck wasn't like thick with muscle from all the lifting that he's managed to do. So it's just interesting, the number of people we know who've been thrown by airstrikes and bombs, and our team in Gaza that just cannot seem to find a place to lay their head where a building is not falling down on them and their family, and just constantly digging through rubble. It is wild to think that we would ever need it, but turns out life comes hard and life comes fast, and it's not just, I think it would have been easy for me. I think I probably put a lot of this into like the vanity category before. And I think that was probably just cope. It was probably just a way of like excusing myself from not wanting to engage in something that was hard, that was foreign, that yes, I am, out of place among, the biggest of the gym bros and, the coolest of the cool kids and whatever. But it's useful.
Yeah.
It's not just for staring in the mirror. It's not just for trying to be shirtless on Instagram. Like, it is incredibly essential to both, I think, personal and the personal and the communal work of peace. I think that's where I want to focus us, the personal and the communal work of peace.
Yeah. I think so too. And I think that's a deeper conversation that we can have all together at Department of Peace. And I don't know if you're new here, if this is like the first time you've listened to the podcast, this might seem weird. It's like, what are people at something called Department of Peace? Why are we talking about strength training? Or maybe you've been listening for a while and this still feels weird because why you didn't sign up for a fitness podcast today. But we're so deeply committed to this 360-degree commitment to peace that it's not something that we just do offhand 5 minutes a day, but it actually is the fully integrated person who can enter into peace in a way that they know real peace for themselves, real peace for their community, and real peace for the world. And we don't get there by just talking about it alone. We have to get there by bringing our whole selves into it. And this is one facet of that 360 degrees that helps us bring our whole selves to it.
Why do you think fitness, strength training, nutrition, rest, the things we'll talk about in future episodes, adaptation, all these things become very privatized, personal, when discussed by, go subscribe to 100 fitness influencers, nutritionists, and sleep experts, and you're going to get 99 to 100 of them that are exploring this strictly through the lens of the individual personal journey. Part of what I think we're trying to do differently, but I want to explore it here, is why do you think we only know fitness, muscle, usefulness, metabolism, nutrition, whole foods, junk food? Why does that conversation only ever occur in the personalized, privatized space? And why is it, maybe with the exception of some nutrition things, not more of a sense of communal, national, and all of us kind of movement or effort?
I think it comes with so much insecurity. This topic comes with so much insecurity, judgment, societal pressure, even, I think it's become a hot button to talk about, and people shy away from talking about it communally because it's not right. Somehow we have this idea that it's not right to put that expectation upon one another. But I think it's because it's so often about the physical image of what it creates rather than the the reality of the strength and well-being that it creates. And it's really difficult today to divide those things from the conversation about strength, about taking care of our bodies, because taking care of our bodies I think in general circles is about how you look. It's not about what you're able to do.
Usefulness.
Yeah. And I don't even think that usefulness is the goal necessarily here. Yeah, I don't.
What about
because
capabilities, capacity?
Because people can come with a lot of different abilities into a community, and that's what makes the community really beautiful.
Agreed.
But we also all can operate at the top level of our ability.
What we can do.
How we can contribute. And I think that's the goal, because it's not just about me as an individual. It's about, I want to bring my best for all of us. And when we reframe it that way, it's a different kind of expectation that shouldn't weigh us down, but instead is about opportunity. And I know that's a mindset thing. I know that there are probably people listening who are like, I don't want the pressure of having to bring my best to my community. And that's fine. That's okay to be in that place. But there is so much beauty in being able to bring your best self and knowing that you brought your best self and to your community for more than just yourself. Like if we're just eating and working out and whatever else to look great on camera and for ourselves, okay, great. There's probably some satisfaction in that. But when we bring our best for the good of the whole, there's so much more satisfaction. We have this lie that it's okay to just, or that maybe the best thing is to be good enough for ourselves. But really the way that humans are created to be in community with one another, we gain the most from being able to bring our good to the community. And I don't know if that's coming across the way that I mean it, but we actually were created for that. We actually exist for that. And we can never get that kind of satisfaction in this vacuum of ourselves. And so this conversation is not about how do you look for your community. It's about what are we doing every day? How are we investing in ourselves for the sake of our own peace and for the sake of the peace of our communities around us? You
mentioned how these topics broadly often come with shame and judgment. What's your own personal relationship with shame and judgment been like since starting this part of life's journey? Has it changed at all?
Do you mean in regards to the gym, or you mean?
Yeah, like weight training, strength training, going to the gym, doing things with your body in a public place, particularly in Iraq. I'll just say for you and then you can add, but I don't know if you would say this. We learned, and you learned in particular, to really like hide your body when you move from America to Iraq. And that predominated in your sense of like how to be in the world, especially here. Yeah. In the Middle East. And so, I just would love to hear how that's been for you as a woman. Like I do think that's been a unique path that I've not had to wrestle with it all in the same way.
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, I'm not a small person. I don't exist inside of a small body. And so the idea of going to a gym where people are working so hard for that facade, it took me, and still sometimes takes me, a minute to get in the right mindset for it, because I'm not the person that you imagine walking out of a gym. But when I'm in there, I'm oftentimes one of the strongest women in the gym.
Stronger than a lot of men.
And stronger than a lot of the guys. And they'll like sometimes hover over me to get to my machine, which drives me nuts. But they'll hover over me, and then they'll have to take weight off in order to use the machine that I was using. And that's a bit of a boost, right? You got to love that. But that was probably the hardest thing for me to move past. Is I don't want people looking at me. I don't want to stand out hardly ever, no matter where I am in life. And so being in the gym where people do look around and you're doing things with your body that you would never do in front of other people is a big mental hurdle. Yeah. But when I can get in that space of why I'm there, like I'm there for the practice. That's the whole point, is to practice. And so when I fail, it shows me where I need to work on getting better. And when I succeed, it's like this huge celebration, especially because we're doing it as a family. That feels good. And so I often, like, I have to remind myself to look to those moments to be there. It's weird in a male culture, predominantly, male area of life, to go work out in like leggings because there's so many guys in the gyms. And this is my choice here in Iraq. Like, it's my choice to go with you and our son to these gyms. There are absolutely gyms here just for women.
And there's women in our gym.
Yeah. And there's other women in our gym.
Like I just don't want to give the impression.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But like there are like places that I could go that would,
more comfortable places.
Would feel more comfortable. But I like being with our family. And so I'm willing to stretch a little bit. I can tell you that going has made me more confident.
Yeah.
And it's pushed me out of my comfort zone, which we value as a family. Not everybody values that, but we really value being pushed out of our comfort zones, being stretched into new places, because it helps us become something we didn't even know was possible. And so I do enjoy that part of it. It does sometimes highlight for me more insecurities. And that's all, again, that's pushing me out of a comfort zone, and I'm having to deal with that, because when you start to focus on this area of your life, you start to see kind of the mainstream media's idea of what the perfect woman looks like, what you should do, what you should be accomplishing in the gym. And I'm not accomplishing it. I am not lighter than I was 3 years ago when we started working out. I'm not, I don't look a lot different than I did then, but I am so much stronger.
Hella stronger.
Yeah. And I am proud of the ways that contributes to our family. I am proud of the ways that has made me stronger mentally and made me more confident as a person. So I think that it's all 100% been worth it. And I have not, like, you have probably gone to the gym every single week since the first day that you went 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe now. And I have not been that. I have started and I have stopped, and I have gone back and I have stopped, and I work out at home sometimes and work out at the gym sometimes. And yet still, in some of that inconsistency, I still think that it's an overall win for me and for our community.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. It's been one of the most, I've told a number of people this. I probably never would have ended up in this part of my life if things hadn't fallen apart the way they did. And, I don't think life works this way. Life isn't one of those choose your own adventure books that we grew up on, where you choose an A or a B page destination and then it's written for you. But if it was, and you have to choose one pathway, and it basically, knowing what I know now, having read this version of my ending, or my next chapter, if I had to forfeit this to go back to the life we had before, the anxiety attacks, the strict focus on life that didn't come with this kind of like 360-degree sense of reclaiming, owning, having full responsibility for my body and its wellness for me, for our family, for my son, for our daughter, for our whole community, for the world. If I had to forfeit that to just go back to kind of like having my job, having the organization we built, I wouldn't do it.
I agree. 100% I agree. And I think one of the best benefits of making this commitment to resistance training is that it forces you to say no to other things, to prioritize yourself for the sake of others. And that is probably the one place that people who love to be helpers, that people who love to give themselves for others, that people who are out there making the most money they can to help the most people possible, they're so used to giving up self that making this one change to prioritize yourself, getting stronger in this one area of life, requires you to say no to things that help you be a better person. Like, where else are those kinds of already world-focused, other people-focused individuals going to get to prioritize themselves? And I love it because it starts you down the path of really being able to discern what is most important in this moment, and stepping into the truth that you have to get to that peace in yourself too. You have to provide a pathway for yourself to be whole and well. And it's just like the gateway drug to that. Mm-hmm. I get to be important too. Mm-hmm. I get to care for myself too, as I'm caring for others. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
I think this is one of the reasons why movements, activists burn out, because we can get so myopic in our vision. We can get so tunnel vision that one of the clever turns of phrase that was weaponized against all of us that we grew up on was like, keep the main thing the main thing. And what that can mean is like, everything should be about this, and anything less. Are you the main thing? What you think your body? These people don't have food. How dare you prioritize protein?
That's
right. And so it can really fuel that twisted sense of like self-abnegation and denial of your own, what I think are often called appetites, but in a negative sense, like appetite is bad. What I think a more healthy person might just call wants, desires, or dare I even say needs, And I think that sort of self-righteous, that tunnel vision kind of self-righteousness on the cause that doesn't have a healthy way to include the self is kind of just a recipe for disaster and burnout. And at a minimum, I know that we were products of that. I don't know if we were perpetuators of it. We very well may have been, but we were certainly products of it and didn't know how to escape without kind of being jettisoned from that vortex and its own gravitational pull. I love this conversation. I think it's so important, because it's a thread to pull on for just a more holistic way of viewing life. It's not the muscle itself. It's not what I was using the word like utility or usefulness alone. It's just a side door to come into the conversation about why peace in all its forms and manifestations has to be both personal and communal. It has to have an inner component, and it has to have an external component. And I think we're trying to figure out, we don't have a lot of exemplars on this. I don't think there's a lot of exemplars out there to tell us how do we pursue strength, skill, endurance, nutrition, sleep, recovery, adaptation, personally and communally for the sake of the world. Like, that's it seems to be a gap in education and marketplace, but it's what our journey has led us to believe is really needful. So if you find yourself somewhere on that journey, Maybe you're the volunteer who gives of yourself endlessly on the weekends to serve in soup kitchens and encampments and delivering goods to people in need. Maybe you're an aid worker still hanging on out there after billions and billions of dollars of aid cuts somewhere in the world, and you're literally schlepping bags of heavy flour. Or if you're not, and you've been giving your life in a slightly different area or focus, and you're starting to be intrigued by what it would mean to like dip your toe in these waters, I would just say, dip your toe. Like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to be all in. And if you think you want to be a part of a kind of community that would cheer you on in that, join us. We'd love to have you kind of come behind the curtain, join the Department of Peace, get off just the podcast kind of platform, and come inside our community, come inside the private chat and the private app that we have, where we're spurring each other on in these conversations every day. How can we increase our strength and our fitness and our benefit to one another and our benefit to ourselves? How can we increase our own wellness in these various forms and aspects of life? Also, if you're a fitness coach, if you're a nutritionist, which we'll talk about more on our next episode, if you're a sleep expert, if you have forged your own kind of expertise in any of these areas, please, we'd love to have you join us inside the Department of Peace. It's not our position that Jess and I or our team around us here at the Department of Peace can fully resource you on your own fitness journey or your own nutrition. That's not our case. The case that we're trying to make here is that we as a community, we're trying to build a community that can resource each other. So if you bring some of those expertise to the table, we need you, because we don't have those as expertise ourselves. What we have is a testimony of what it was like to give everything to the work of peace externally, but not always give it to our own bodies. And what some others have is what it's been like to focus on their own wellness, their own fitness journey, but not always know how that might apply in a communal setting as we prepare for serving those around us, maybe even prepare for the worst of what's to come. So join us in the Department of Peace, and join us for the next episode, where we'll be talking about nutrition and its impact on your personal peace and peace of the world around you. All right, cheers. Till next time. Bye.